Welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. My name is Alyssa, and this is my review for Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 13, Coming Home. This is, of course, the Season 4 finale for Star Trek Discovery. I will start with the standard spoiler warning. If you have not seen up through the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 4, then you will not want to watch this video or things will be spoiled for you. So, let me start with my overall thoughts of the episode, and then I'll get into some of the details. So, the big question coming into this week for me was, will they be able to stick the landing, or will they fuck it up somehow? And did they stick the landing? Yeah, sure. But in the absolute minimum way possible that they could have stuck the landing. To be perfectly honest with you, last week's episode was so good that it really kind of set up this week's episode for a layup. Like, it would have been really hard to fuck it up at that point. I don't know how they could have fucked it up. Like, right in the middle of the action, they stopped to have each member of the bridge crew tell a random fact about their childhood and just go around in a circle and do that. I don't know. Like, it would have been hard to really fuck it up because last week's episode was really good and I think really set up the finale for success. So, under those circumstances, sure, the finale stuck the landing. It was good. It was satisfying. I have no complaints other than the fact that it could have been better. That the last week's episode was so good that it could have set up for something phenomenal, like something that could be considered one of the best episodes, not only in Discovery, but one of the best episodes in all of Star Trek. Like, it really had that kind of potential. Now, that's probably unfair expectations to put on an episode to say, well, if it's not one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek, it's a disappointment. That's unfair. But it's hard for me to not think about some of the things they could have done that could have made it to that level. But then again, how often does Discovery reach that level? Not very often, so that's probably unfair of me to put that sort of expectation on it. So with all of that, it stuck the landing. It was satisfying. It was good. I really enjoyed it. And I'll try not to focus on the fact that it could have been even better. There is one aspect of Michael Burnham's story arc that I have been talking about all throughout all of my reviews of this season, that there was something they really need to do with Michael Burnham, and if they don't do it, it's going to be kind of a big disappointment and kind of a failure. So did they do that? Yeah, but once again, in the most minimum way possible. And I will talk about what that is as I get into the details. If you've watched my reviews before, then you already know. And if not, don't worry, I will get to it in a few minutes. So first, though, I do want to start by talking about that B plot. So by this, I'm referring to the plot in the Alpha Quadrant with Tilly and Vance going to rescue the refugees, to get as many people off Earth and Navarre and Titan as they could. And this was a pleasant surprise. Like, I was not expecting to see this storyline. And in fact, I had quoted earlier that Mary Wiseman had said, oh, don't worry, Tilly will be back later this season. And I honestly thought coming into this week that she was a liar, because I was like, well, how are they going to fit Tilly into this? But it actually makes perfect sense to show us the perspective of people in the Alpha Quadrant trying to help the people on Earth, because that really raises the stakes. It really shows how real it is. It's not just, a bunch of people on Discovery's bridge saying, oh, I want to hike the PCT. Oh, and I want to go to the coast of Oregon. No, sorry, you can't do that because the Earth's about to be destroyed. That's pretty much all we got for our stakes. So for us to actually see what is happening was really a good move on the show's part. And to use known characters such as Tilly and Vance to do that was even a better move. And I do have to mention, though, I didn't know that the Federation station or whatever, the Federation headquarters, flew like that. I thought it was stationary. It's like this really cool spiraling gyro thing. It was really cool looking. So that was really cool. And I liked how Vance and Tilly kind of thought they were doomed, so they started having a little drink together. And those are not two characters that we've seen connect too often or have a really strong personal relationship. But, I bought it. I was totally fine with it. They were the two characters who were there together by happenstance, and, they both thought they were about to die, so it makes sense that they would interact in that way, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't catch exactly where Vance got that... got that little flask from that he was drinking out of. Was he just in his pocket? Did he just carry that around in case, he's about to die or whatever? I don't know. It was kind of funny to me. But anyways, I really enjoyed this subplot. It was a pleasant surprise for me. Okay, let's get into the A plot with Discovery. And we start off the episode with them still stuck in that bubble thingy and trying to find a way to get out. And they come up with a solution that they can use the spore drive but not go anywhere. Just do the little spinny thing and burst out of the bubble that way. But then the spore drive is going to be damaged and they won't be able to fix it till they get back to a Federation base, which they're not going to be able to do because they are decades away from getting home. And so they decided, we got to do what we got to do. So they choose to do that. Now, one might say that then it was just kind of a cop-out that Species 10C just wormholed them home. But honestly, that's exactly what I expected to happen. And in fact, I almost think the characters should have expected it because Species 10C has been shown to use wormholes with the DMA. So why wouldn't they just do that? As long as, everything worked out for them and they were able to make peace with 10C, they always had that out. And I knew it was going to happen that way because otherwise, then Discovery Season 5 turns into Star Trek Voyager 2.0 and they're trying to get home. And I don't want to see that. I've already watched Voyager. I don't want to see another show like that. And I knew they weren't going to do that. So even though I already knew that that's what was going to happen, I don't have a problem with it. Because, first of all, that's always the case in Star Trek. You always know that they're going to be fine. And going back to the original series, through Next Generation, maybe less so in Deep Space Nine on certain occasions, but definitely Voyager, work out for them. So I don't mind it. And the important thing here is that the stakes were real to the characters. The characters made a choice to take that risk, and that was good. So I am fine with all of that. So then they head on over to try to stop Tarka. And let me talk a little bit about Book and Tarka before I get into the big thing that I want to talk about with Michael Burnham. I don't know. Kind of thought it was super easy, barely an inconvenience for Book to take down Tarka. I thought it would be, harder than that or something. And, they end up doing that cliche thing where the villain or the antagonist, not really a villain, but the antagonist sees the light at the very last possible minute. However, it's too late. The ball's already in motion. There's nothing I can do to stop it now. I feel like I've seen this so many times. Now, is this still a million times better than Mustache Twirly Osira from season 3? Yes, it is. But again, I feel like this is the absolute minimum they could have done with this character. Like, I feel like they could have done even more with it. I don't feel like I was, I don't know, particularly attached to his story there at the end. So it was fine, it was fine. But again, it feels like the absolute minimum that they needed to do to stick the landing there. So yeah, it was all right. Now let me get into the big Michael Burnham story arc. So what I have been talking about all season long is that Michael Burnham is going to have to make a choice to sacrifice somebody, and I was thinking it would probably either be Saru or Book, and after last week's episode it seemed really likely to be Book. And the reason why this needs to happen, because she has never been able to do this. She wasn't able to do it with Ariam in season 2, and President Rillick specifically pointed this out to her in that first episode. So it needed to happen. So was the show able to satisfy this? Sure. I mean, Burnham did make the choice to sacrifice Book in order to save the galaxy, or at least to save Earth and save themselves. She made that choice. So she was willing to sacrifice Book. So sure, would have it been a lot more powerful had Book actually died? Yes, it would have been. Yes, it would have. But I actually wasn't disappointed when they brought Book back to life, because it was kind of an anticlimactic death, like not transporting onto the bridge and losing the transporter signal. Very anticlimactic. What I was hoping for would be something more along the lines of a Spock death from Star Trek 2. Now, not that exact thing with Book and Burnham having their hands against the glass and, nothing, not exactly the same, but something where they get to have a final tearful goodbye, a really powerful emotional scene between the two of them, not just Book trying to transport onto the bridge and then disappearing. So it was kind of a disappointing death when I thought it was a death, and I did actually think he died. Like, I bought it because I have been expecting Michael Burnham to have to make a decision to let someone die, and I thought it would be Book. So I totally bought that he was dead, but then when I thought he was dead, I thought it was kind of an anticlimactic death. Like, they didn't get to have that tearful goodbye. He just kind of didn't materialize on the bridge. So when they brought him back and undid the anticlimactic death, I was totally fine with that. I was totally okay with that. And the one good thing, though, about that anticlimactic death that was Sonequa Martin Green's performance in that scene. Though I would have preferred if they had had an actual exchange between the two characters. Her performance was basically the exact opposite of William Shatner in Star Trek 3, which I just recently reviewed. You should check out on my channel. I recently did Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. The whole... You Klingon bastard! You killed my son, who I've only ever met 3 times! Like, it was just... it was really forced, wasn't natural, made no sense. He literally had 3 conversations with the dude. I know it was his son, but he didn't know him. So it was just melodramatic, overacting, didn't buy it. And it's something that you can laugh at about that film. Whereas Sonequa Martin Green in this scene was the anti-William Shatner. It was so powerful seeing, the look of hope and joy on her face when it looks like Book was beaming aboard. And then how that just turned into absolute devastation when he didn't materialize, and then being forced to gather herself very quickly and make orders and get going, and she still has a ship to save. Fantastic. So that actually would have been the one thing that would have made Book's death, had it happened, a little worthwhile. Even though it's not quite what I wanted, because there's no exchange between the two of them. That was the best aspect of that. But I don't have a problem with them bringing him back. I was totally okay with that because him not materializing on the bridge, as I said, would have been anticlimactic, even with Sonequa Martin Green's performance there. Now I want to get into the final conversation that they have with Species 10C. I love this. I do feel like I was suspending a little disbelief because of how hard it was for them to communicate with Species 10C last week, and now all of a sudden they're saying these really complicated things that I didn't think they had the ability to communicate to them. Like it was, they were last week they were communicating very simple things, and this week, President Rillick starts off with, so this is what we'd like to do, and then we want to go do this, and this is what we have to do, and this is why, this is all the complex feelings that we're experiencing, and this is what humans are, and this is what, like, goes on for 5 minutes. I'm like, that's way too complicated. But then they just kept doing that. Like, everything they said was complicated. What Book said at the end was very complicated. So I was just like, you know what? We'll suspend disbelief because they gotta have this. They have to have this kind of communications with Species 10C. Otherwise, the scene doesn't work. So I was like, fine, I'll suspend disbelief there because I actually really did enjoy this scene quite a lot. And you know what? I actually did like that the whole bridge crew was there. I really got the feeling that the bridge crew is a crew. And you don't need to have them randomly spout out lines about their childhood. Just having them go through this together and seeing them on the bridge together and going through this trauma together and then seeing them stand there all together talking to Species 10C, even if the side characters don't have any lines, it still feels like they are a crew. And I also loved Colbert's choice to stay with his family. That was very sweet, very in character. So I loved all of that. And I did like Book's speech at the end. It was like, no, that's not good enough. You can't just do your DMA thing when just because there's not people around, because you're still causing damage. And I love that Species 10C went along with that. And also, it was just a really cool setting. What were all these like strawberry mushroom things going up and down? What were those? It was just and Species 10C was just fantastic. I had really hoped for a very unique, very different kind of species, and they really, really delivered here. And I forgot to mention that earlier in the episode, the president of Navarre had done the mind meld and found out that they are one being that they have a hard time perceiving individuality. Now, I love that they had President Rillick throw in the line about the Borg so that they can distinguish them from the Borg. Because I think that I have actually written things like this in some of the ramblings that I have written before, where a species is so evolved that it loses its sense of individuality, because to evolve, a species loves each other and becomes together. Not to get all hippy-dippy on you, but that's how we evolve. So I've always imagined that a really evolved species would kind of have a hard time distinguishing individuals. So I thought it was fantastic, and I thought it was very key for them to point out that this is not the same thing as the Borg at all, because with the Borg, it's not a mutual thing. It's not things people voluntarily do to become one. This is more mutual. And what it actually reminded me more of than the Borg was the Great Link with the changelings. Except in this case, they don't just dismiss the solids or just dismiss people who aren't a part of their collective or their link, whatever you want to call it, that they are open to learning about people who view themselves as individuals. So that kind of is what distinguishes them from the Great Link. But anyway, I freaking loved it. That's what it all boils down to. I absolutely love the concept of Species 10C, and I think this is probably the aspect of the finale that they most delivered on, as compared to some of my fears from earlier in the season that they were going to really drop the ball on this species. I think they delivered big time with species 10C. Now let me talk about that ending there, because I noticed that when they wrapped up the story with Species 10C and they went through the wormhole and went back home again, I looked at the clock. And the episode had been on for 50 minutes. And I had noticed when I started the episode that the time at the bottom of the screen was 1 hour. So I was like, we got 10 minutes left. So what are they going to do for 10 minutes? Now, they definitely needed to do something. They definitely needed an epilogue. They couldn't just end it there. But 10 minutes worth, I don't know that they needed. I don't know if I can go through everything and what should have been cut and should have been kept. There are definitely things that needed to be there. Number one being the Book and Burnham final goodbye there. Even though Book just kind of gets the slap in the wrist treatment, but Star Trek has a very recent track record of doing that, like they did with Girardi and Picard, where she was like, oh, well, I murdered my boyfriend, but I was brainwashed, so I got off. Which is fine. I don't actually have any problem with it. And so he's been basically like sentenced to community service is what it seems like to me. But they'll find a way to just kind of get him back in with Burnham in season 5, and then his community service will just fall by the wayside, and then it won't matter anyway. So, but that's totally fine. That scene now was necessary. I liked that they had a scene with Burnham and Rillick to kind of show the development of the relationship and how far they've come, because that's a relationship that I have really enjoyed and really, really enjoyed watching it develop over the course of this season. However, I did not need them to say, oh, do you remember that specific Kobayashi Maru conversation we had back in episode 1? It was too telegraphed. Like, you don't need to point out specific things from earlier episodes to tell us, how far you've come. Just show us how far you've come as friends. Just by, just showing us, just by the interactions, not by telegraphing oh, remember how you wanted me to be the captain of the Voyager and I didn't want to be whatever. I don't know. It was a little too forced. Yeah, maybe a little bit too many of the, sappy, we're all hugging each other scenes. I don't know. The one scene that I definitely did like is, the Earth joining the Federation, although I will say that I thought that general dude had died, or the general person from Earth. I thought she had died. So I guess I wasn't paying close enough attention, and she was standing there at the end. I was like, wait, didn't she die? Didn't she sacrifice herself? But no, I guess not. So I don't know. I don't know if that's the show's fault or me. I just wasn't paying attention. But anyways, so the president of Earth comes, and it's freaking Stacey Abrams! That is the absolute last person in the world I was expecting to walk off of that shuttlecraft. I mean, it would have been no different than it had been Joe Biden himself. I would have been like, what? They're on Star Trek? But it was so cool. I assumed that Stacey Abrams was a lifelong Trekkie and really wanted to be on the show, so they got her to do this cameo, and I love that she's the president of Earth. Take that, Republicans. She's the president of Earth. For those of you who are in my international audience and you're not sure who Stacey Abrams is, she's an American politician and activist. She ran for the governor of the state of Georgia in 2018, narrowly lost. There was some kind of shenanigans because her opponent was the Secretary of State, so he was kind of in charge of the voting rolls, and he unenrolled people or whatever, and it was a little shady. But after she lost that, then she became an activist, really getting out the vote, especially in the African American community. she really is largely responsible for Biden winning the state of Georgia in the 2020 election, and which helped him to win the presidency. So, very key political figure in the United States, and maybe not the favorite of some on the right wing side of things, but I'm sure there'll be some complaints that she was in there, but I still find it really hilarious that people on the right wing side of things get mad when Star Trek puts politics in their Star Trek, because the very core of Star Trek from the very beginning is left wing slash semi socialist ideals. From the very, very beginning. There's no money in Star Trek. It's anti-capitalist. It's baked into the very concept of the entire franchise. So I think it's funny when people realize that and like, hey, you're putting politics in my Star Trek. No, it's always been there. You just don't always notice it. It's part of what Star Trek is. Anyways, I digress. Let me go ahead and wrap this up with my rating. All right, so let me go ahead and give my rating out of 10. 1 is the lowest possible score, 10 is the highest possible score. And my rating for Coming Home is an 8. They did it. Good job. You stuck the landing. There's things that they could have done even better that would have made it a 9 or a 10. But hey, 8 for the finale. Pretty good. I think overall I would probably say this is the best season of Discovery, even if there is still room for improvement. I've talked previously about how they could have used fewer episodes and got to the point quicker. But overall, still a really great season, a really enjoyable season. And I enjoyed this finale, even if it wasn't perfect. So 8 out of 10. Okay, so that's a wrap for my coverage of Discovery this season. Except for one thing, I will do a discussion with my brother Mark from Enchantment of Eternity. Date and time and channel to be determined, so keep an eye on my channel for that, or if you also watch his channels, you can keep an eye on his channel for that information as well. It'll be sometime next week. We'll let you know. And also, stay tuned on my channel for Star Trek Picard, which I will have my review out for that by tomorrow. That's Friday, March 18th, not May, March 18th at the latest. Please subscribe if you have not already and hit that like button. All right, everyone. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.